Asterisk hash, the little friend who changed everything, asterisk asterisk, a gentle story of unexpected kind. The rain had been falling steadily for 3 days in the small town of Millbrook. It was the kind of persistent autumn rain that made people hurry past each other on the sidewalks, heads down, umbrellas clutched tight. But on this particular Tuesday morning, something extraordinary was about to happen in the gleaming office tower that stood at the heart of downtown. Asterisk Robert Matthews sat behind his mahogany desk on the 42nd floor, reviewing quarterly reports with the same methodical precision he'd maintained for 37 years. At 62, he had built his construction company from a single truck and a borrowed ladder into one of the region's most respected firms. The walls of his corner office displayed awards, certificates, and photographs of buildings that bore his company's signature, solid, dependable structures that would stand for generations. Asterisk, but lately, something had been weighing on Robert's mind. Perhaps it was the empty house he returned to each evening, or the realization that his calendar was filled with meetings, but empty of the simple moments that once brought him joy. His wife Margaret had passed 2 years ago, and their children lived busy lives in distant cities. Success, he was learning, could be a lonely companion. Asterisk, as he reached for his coffee cup, Robert heard something unusual, a soft tapping at his office door. Not the confident rap of an executive or the hurried knock of an assistant, but something gentler, something ... different. Asterisk, come in, he called, expecting to see his secretary with another stack of contracts. Asterisk, instead, the door opened just wide, enough for a small figure to slip through. A little boy, no more than 4 years old, stood in the doorway clutching a blue water bottle. His brown hair was tousled, his clothes were simple but clean, and his eyes held that particular mixture of curiosity and hope that belongs only to children. Asterisk, Robert blinked, certain he was seeing things. "Hello there," he said softly, setting down his papers. "Are you lost, son?" Asterisk, the boy shook his head and took a tentative step forward. "Are you the man who builds the buildings?" he asked, his voice carrying the careful pronunciation of a child who'd been practicing important words. Asterisk, "I am," Robert replied, his business instincts momentarily forgotten. "My name is Robert. What's yours?" Asterisk, "I'm Tommy," the boy said, taking another small step closer. "Tommy Henderson. I live with my mom in the apartments across the street." He pointed toward the window with his free hand. Asterisk, Robert followed the gesture to the modest apartment complex, visible through the rain-streaked glass. He'd seen the building countless times, but had never really noticed it just another structure in the landscape of his busy life. Asterisk, "That's nice, Tommy," Robert said, unsure how to proceed. "But how did you get up here? This is a very tall building." Asterisk, Tommy's face lit up with pride. "I pressed all the buttons in the elevator. The nice lady downstairs said I could visit if I was good. She's talking to my mom now." Asterisk, Robert felt a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, the first genuine smile he'd experienced in weeks. Well, that was quite an adventure. "But why did you want to visit me?" Asterisk, the boy's expression grew serious, and he clutched his water bottle tighter. "My mom says you're very important. She says you help people by building homes and schools and places where people work." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "I wanted to ask you something." Asterisk, "What's that, Tommy?" Asterisk, the words came out in a rush, as if the boy had been rehearsing them. "Can you be my friend? I don't have very many friends, and Mom says sometimes grown-ups need friends too." Asterisk, Robert felt something shift in his chest, a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. Here was this small person, offering friendship with a simple directness that adults had forgotten how to manage. No agenda, no expectations, just a pure desire for connection. Asterisk, "I'd be honored to be your friend," and meant it completely. Asterisk, the boy's face broke into a radiant smile. "Really? That's good, because I brought you something." He held up the water bottle. "Mom says it's important to drink water, especially when you work hard. She packed this for me, but I thought you might need it more." Asterisk, Robert accepted the bottle with the solemnity the gesture deserved. "Thank you, Tommy. That's very thoughtful." Asterisk, for the next 20 minutes, Robert found himself in the most refreshing conversation he'd had in months. Tommy told him about his favorite colors, blue and green, his pet goldfish named Sunny, and his dreams of building a treehouse someday. In return, Robert found himself sharing stories about his own childhood, his first construction project, and the joy he'd once felt in creating something lasting and beautiful. Asterisk, when Tommy's mother appeared at the door, a young woman with worried eyes and work-worn hands, Robert, stood immediately. Asterisk, I'm so sorry, she began, clearly mortified. I was filling out paperwork downstairs, and he just disappeared. I hope he wasn't bothering you. Asterisk, not at all, Robert said quickly. Mrs. Henderson, isn't it? I'm Robert Matthews. Your son has been delightful company. Asterisk, Sarah Henderson looked between her son and the distinguished man in the expensive suit, clearly trying to process the situation. He's been talking about meeting you for weeks. I work at the diner on 5th Street, and we can see your building from there. He always asks about the people who work in the tall building. Asterisk, something in her voice, tired but proud, worried but hopeful, touched Robert deeply. Would you both like to see the view from up here? It's quite something on a clear day. Asterisk, as they stood by the window, Tommy pressed his small hands against the glass. It's like being in the clouds, he whispered. Asterisk, Robert watched the boys wonder, and felt his own perspective shifting. When had he stopped noticing how remarkable the view was? When had he forgotten the miracle of being able to see the whole world spread out below? Asterisk, Tommy, he said slowly, would you like to come visit again sometime? Maybe your mom could bring you by on a Saturday, and I could show you some of the buildings we've made. Asterisk, Tommy's eyes widened. Really? Could we go see them? Asterisk, if your mom says it's okay. Asterisk, Sarah Henderson looked at Robert with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. That's very kind of you, Mr. Matthews, but you really don't need to. Asterisk, please, Robert interrupted gently. I'd like to. It's been a long time since I remembered why I fell in love with building things in the first place. Asterisk, that Saturday. Robert found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, taking a leisurely drive through the city. Seeing it through the eyes of a 4-year-old who asked questions about everything, they visited the library his company had built, the community center that had been his first major project, and the school where Tommy would go in a few years. Asterisk, at each stop, Tommy's excitement was infectious. He wanted to know how many bricks were in each building, why the windows were different shapes, and whether the buildings ever got lonely at night. His questions reminded Robert that every structure, it was more than just steel and concrete. It was a place where people lived their lives, created memories, and found shelter. Asterisk, as weeks passed, Saturday visits became a cherished tradition. Robert would arrive at the Henderson apartment with small gifts, a hard hat-sized, just for Tommy, picture books about construction, or sometimes just a bag of the boys' favorite cookies. Sarah would make coffee, and they would sit in her small kitchen, talking about everything and nothing. Asterisk, Robert learned that Sarah was studying to become a nurse, working double shifts to pay for school while caring for Tommy. He learned that Tommy's father had left when the boy was 2, and that Sarah's quiet strength was built on determination and love. He learned that kindness didn't require grand gestures. Sometimes it was simply showing up, listening, and caring. Asterisk, in return, Robert found himself changing in ways he hadn't expected. He started leaving his office earlier, taking time to notice the people around him. He began funding a scholarship program for single parents, pursuing education. He discovered that success meant more than profit margins and quarterly reports. It meant the connections you made and the lives you touched. Asterisk, one evening, as Robert tucked Tommy into bed after their usual Saturday adventure, the boy looked up at him with sleepy eyes. Asterisk, Mr. Robert? Asterisk, yes, buddy. Asterisk, I'm glad you're my friend. Mom says you make our life better, but I think we make yours better too. Asterisk, Robert felt his throat tighten with emotion. You're absolutely right, Tommy. Everything better. Asterisk, as he drove home that night, Robert reflected on the miracle that had begun with a simple knock on his door. A 4-year-old boy had taught him that friendship was the most valuable construction project of Albelt, not with bricks and mortar, but with time, attention, and love. Asterisk, the rain had stopped weeks ago, but the warmth that Tommy had brought into his life continued to grow. Sometimes, Robert thought, the most important doors we open are the ones we never expected to find. Asterisk, and sometimes the smallest visitors carry the biggest gifts.